everybody. Jaime, Saunders and I are here for the Ask the Advocates on migraine.com. We're very excited to be with you this morning and talk about some different topics surrounding migraine and other headache disorders. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Shoshana Lipson. I am the founder of Migraine Meanderings and CGRP and Migraine Support Group on Facebook.
I'm Jaime Saunders. I'm the founder of the Migraine Diva blog. I also write for migraine.com. I'm a patient advocate and opinion leader, and we're just here to help answer your questions and guide you through patient advocacy, parenting with migraine, dealing with depression and panic, anxiety while living with chronic illness, and just help guide and support you through this migraine journey that we're all on. So we welcome you all. We're grateful that you're here this, at this early hour. I know it's difficult to get up early when you live with migraine, so we appreciate you being here. And we're just going to go ahead and dive in. And we hope you enjoy our questions and this conversation. This is going to be a candid conversation. Think of it as it being a conversation with your girlfriends. And there's no judgment, and we're here to validate your experience, and we're here to just be here for you.
So if you're just joining us now, give us a thumbs up. Just let us know that you can hear us properly. We see some people there. Hi, Nancy. Hi, Marsha. Hi, Katie. Just make a comment, who you are, where you're from. And if you have questions, please put those in the comments as well. And we're going to try to answer your questions after we've gone through a couple of topics. So the first thing that we wanted to talk about today was learning to be kind to ourselves. That's something that a lot of people just take for granted. But when you have a chronic illness such as migraine or another headache disorder, that can be really challenging. So Jaime, how do you deal with the sense of being a burden to other people around you?
Well, that took me a really long time to learn not to feel guilty about, especially at the crux of my chronic migraine journey. My children were really small. So I really, really felt like a burden if I could not perform to the duties that I felt like I need to perform and be this mom and wife that I really, wanted to be every single day. And I internalized that, and that fueled the depression and anxiety, and that in turn fueled the pain. But it took a lot of internal work and a lot of reflecting and putting in that time to take care of myself and realizing that it's okay and it's not selfish of me to take time to take care of myself and realize that, one, I am not responsible for my pain and I am not my illness was very important, understanding those two things. And once I realized that, then I can start to let go of that feeling of being a burden and having that sense of guilt. It does crop up from time to time because I am a human and we all want to be able to be all the things that we wish we can be. And we can't always fully show up in life like we want to. But again, it's going back to remembering I am not my illness, I'm not my migraine, and these things are gonna happen. I'm gonna have bad days. And knowing that my family understands that and they don't, treat me any differently or make me feel as though I'm less than a mom or a wife or, in their eyes, I'm just as perfect as somebody who's not ill. So remembering those things helps me keep things in perspective and makes me become more kind to myself in the end.
Right. Absolutely. I totally relate to that. I'm sure that a lot of you relate to that as well. I grew up with migraine. I have no memories of my life without experiencing migraine attacks. And I think when I was, especially as a teenager, when I was in college or even in the early years of my career, I really didn't talk to people about it because I felt like it was just, I was too much of a burden and I didn't want that to be added or put onto them. And then when I became married and a mother of 3 young children, it was extremely hard. I still carry a lot of guilt for the times that I have missed the events I haven't been able to go to, the things I haven't been able to do, and all the emergency room trips and just the things that they saw that really children should not see. So that's really hard. Honestly, I just did not handle it very well being a burden. I learned to put a face on it. I was extremely good at putting a face on it, except when I used to crash. I would say that probably a lot of my friends for most of my life did not know what I was going through or have any inkling at all that I had migraine. And it was not until the last few years when my body just finally gave way, because when you put a face on it and you don't want to be a burden to people, you tend to take too much medication to try to cover it up and just to push through. Push through is like a phrase we use a lot as people with migraine, right? So I just used to push through, but that takes a toll on your body and on the different organs in your body. So eventually my body crashed and I basically became a blob on the floor. And then I started to learn how important it was to speak out, and that I really was not a burden to people, that I still have things that I can give. I still have a purpose. I still have value. There are a lot of things that I can't do and be kind to myself. And I need to focus on those things and let go of the other things. And so that's, especially with my children, I would say I can't do this, but I can do that.
Yes.
But it still kind of dogs me. Like you say, I'm human, right?
Right.
And I'm always telling my husband, who is incredibly supportive, I'm so sorry that I'm sick. Mm-hmm. And it's really sad we feel a need to apologize.
Yes.
Like that, right?
Yes, it is. And, you know, it's unfortunate that we feel like we have to always apologize for something that is outside of our control.
Right.
And it takes practice to just remember neurobiological disease. So we need to stop apologizing for the genetic makeup and the way that our brain is wired.
Right.
Okay. And just putting things into that kind of perspective, it's like, okay, I need to give myself permission to let that go. Right. And that's hard to do. And like you said, we're so used to pushing through. But like I said, it takes practice and it takes putting things into perspective. And at the end of the day, we all deserve to be kind to ourselves.
Right.
And
absolutely.
Yes. So it's an important piece of managing your pain and making sure that you have a much better quality of life despite your pain. Right, absolutely. And that kind of makes me think about some of the ways that we can be kind to ourselves. I get asked by people all the time, especially since I've been involved in advocacy, how do you do this? Or how are you kind to yourself? How do you keep on going? One of the ways that I am personally kind to myself is whenever I go somewhere, like we have just finished a conference here, so I plan for downtime, which actually is another word for crash time. Mm-hmm. So it basically is going to be me, my bed, my pillow, and my blanket for a few days and possibly even longer. So that's part of being kind to yourself. Learning that you can make choices, I think. So I choose to come to events like this, partly because I want to advocate, I want to help make a difference, partly because I love getting to know people like you. Mm-hmm. So making friends with other people who have the same kind of condition you have is a way of being kind to yourself because you get support. Right. Just being around people who get it. So what are some of the ways that you find that, you know, it's good for you to be kind to yourself? One of the biggest things that I do to be kind to myself is to give myself 5 to 10 minutes every morning just for myself. And I just gauge where I'm at and just come to peace with whatever I'm feeling that day and be okay with whatever that is. Whether that I'm feeling pretty okay and I feel like I can get some things done that day, or whether it is a really, really bad day, and coming to peace with that. That's an important piece for me. Also for me, like you said, the advocacy work gives my pain purpose. And that is another way for me to be kind to myself, because it's another way to funnel my energy instead of being stuck in how the pain makes me feel in a negative way. It gives me something positive to look forward to. And it's hard work. It's really difficult. And like you said, you have to build in that time afterward to crash.
Right.
You have to build in those days afterward to allow yourself to recover. But it's okay to do that. But having that opportunity to advocate for others like myself, be in a community of other people, I'm in the same space, and creating a family around you, and building friendships and relationships, because migraine is so isolating. It's important for me to do that for myself. And that's an important piece, because we spend so much time in our caves,
Right.
in our little dark spaces. So having, those moments every couple of months to get out and do something productive and validating.
It's huge.
It is extremely huge. And it's an amazing piece to my journey that I'm so grateful for. And it really does help, keep things in a much more positive light for me.
Right. Absolutely. And you mentioned advocacy. So I wanted to kind of touch on that really quickly. Again, I get asked all the time by people, how do I do this? Honestly, I don't really know. I think a lot of us don't. I try not to think ahead. So if I think about all the things that I'm going to do in a month's time or 2 months' time or next year, I get very depressed and discouraged. I just take it one day at a time. I try to plan way ahead. So anything I have to write, I write weeks and weeks ahead. So that's a couple of things. But being an advocate is really, really important. One of the things that we talked about actually at this conference was how to overcome stigma and how to bring about change. And one of the things that occurred to me was just kind of the word outrage. And I'm using that on purpose. It's kind of an emotive word. But in order to bring about change in a disease that does not have a lot of recognition, but that is very complex, often completely incapacitating, for which there is very little still education for both medical professions and society in general, then you kind of need emotive language a lot of the time for people to be outraged that we have to deal with this disease, that it is so capacitating and there's so little understanding about it. So being an advocate allows us to speak up, to find our voice, not to be nasty about it, but just to say, we are here, we are going to be heard. This is a terrible disease. It takes a terrible toll. It is genetic, so if you have migraine, if a child has one parent with migraine, then there's a 50% chance of that child having migraine. If both of them have it or have it in their family, then it's closer to a 75% chance. That is huge, and it's something that a lot of us deal with as parents. So even if you feel like you can't make a difference for yourself, even if you say, for example, you've tried everything, you've gone through everything, and you've lost hope, then we still need to fight for our children and our grandchildren. And it is us, as we stand up and say, we are here and we are visible with an invisible disease, and we are going to be seen. So that is why advocacy is so important.
It's extremely important. And I know advocacy can be a very intimidating word for a lot of people. And when you think of advocacy, you might think, well, that means I have to get out of my house and go, lobby, with my state, local, or federal, legislators. And that's not always the case. Advocating starts with yourself. And you can advocate for yourself with your healthcare providers and taking charge of your healthcare and creating a relationship with your healthcare provider, and really taking charge of where you see your healthcare going. And that's where you start to find your voice. And that's where you start to find the power within your pain. And you start to become empowered, and you start to find your strength, and you start to stand in that. That's where advocacy begins. That's where you start to find your fight and your strength. And that's extremely important. And that's where it started for me.
Right.
Is when I wanted to make a change in how I wanted to see my healthcare going. I wasn't happy with it. And for years, I felt like, well, this is what my doctor said I should do, so I'm going to do that, not questioning it. We fear sometimes questioning our physicians. It's okay. if you're not comfortable with something. Stand within your truth and your
Right.
validity. It's your body, and you know what will work and what will not work for you. And it's okay to question it and say, hey, I'm not comfortable with that. This is something I think will be a better fit for me. Can you work with me to get to achieve this goal? That's where it started for me.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and also with my writing, that was a huge part of my advocacy. You don't have to leave your house to be an advocate. Just by writing about your experiences helps to validate your own, and it validates others who are just not capable of putting out their own experiences. Right. For whatever reason they can't share, or they haven't found their voice yet. Being able to share your voice and your story and your experiences validates so many others' experiences, and you're an advocate in that arena as well. There are so many different ways of being an advocate, and it's extremely important. Just being here and watching this is being an advocate, because you're doing something to elevate yourself, and that's extremely important. So finding those little ways every single day that you're doing something to elevate yourself. Remember those things, and like, I'm doing something for myself. You're being an advocate every single day, because you're getting up and you're fighting for your health and your life. You're an advocate already. So remember that, and just take that and try to just push that into whatever area that you want to improve.
Absolutely. It can be as simple as just learning to speak up when you go to your doctor's appointment. It could be speaking up with your friends and telling them, hey, I am a hypersensitive to certain kinds of lights or scents. Just having the courage to do that is advocating for yourself. It could be meeting someone who has migraine and talking to them about some of the resources that you know. It could just be sharing a meme or a post online, helping raise awareness and helping spread education. I saw someone made a comment about feeling like they're a failure, and that is such a sad thing. It's such a common thing. Honestly, we feel like we're a burden. We feel like we're a failure. We feel like we fail our families, we fail our children, we fail our friends, we fail our employers, we fail society, and we fail our medications. But the reality is our medications fail us.
Exactly.
And sadly, a lot of times society has failed us because this disease has so little awareness. So I talk about bringing migraine out of the shadows and into public awareness. It's so important. I just want to encourage you, you are not a failure. You just are not. Someone asked a question, how do you cope with mom guilt when migraine impacts your parenting? So I just wanted to speak into that quickly. I know that you have something to say as well. So we both have children. They're kind of about the same age and the same gap. So we went through similar experiences, probably. I'm not sure about your children, but I have 3 sons. 2 of them were diagnosed with migraine at around the age of 9. So I dealt with the guilt, not only of the fact that my children were always seeing me go to the emergency room, that I could not go to a lot of their events, that they saw me crying and just in agonizing pain so much, and I was not basically there for them, and that's got worse as I've got older and as they've got older. So there's that aspect of the guilt, which is a huge part of mom guilt, and I could talk about that for an hour just right? But there's also the guilt when my oldest son first told me, Mommy, flashy lights, and my stomach heaved and my heart, I thought, was going to stop, because I knew what was going on with him, and it went rapidly downhill for him the next few years, and then my middle son followed soon after that. So there's that guilt. Oh no, my children have migraine too, and at that time, nobody really talked about heredity or the chance of your children having migraine, so I wasn't prepared for it. But I did recognize it. So it's easy to say, how could I possibly have passed this on to my children? I know what they're going through. It's horrific. How could I possibly have just not been available for them? But the reality is that this is not my fault, and it's not your fault. And that's what I want to tell all of you out there, right? It's not our fault that we have this. So don't carry the guilt and the burden of something that's not your fault. If you recognize migraine in your children and you do something about it, then that is not a little thing, that's a huge thing. And that should help alleviate some of the guilt. telling your children, I'm sorry, I can't go out in the sun, but I can sit here and build a Lego model or do coloring, or like my children are college age. So I tell them, I can't drive long distances and come and see you, but I can help you with financial aid or paperwork that needs to be filled out. So there are things that I can do, and I'm always there, able to and willing to listen to them and just be there for them. And I hope my children know that. Maybe one of them is going to watch this at some point, and I'm sure they'll talk to me about it. But I think focusing on the things that you can do as a parent, who you are, and that this disease is not our fault. Those are kind of the pillars that help deal with that guilt.
Exactly. For me, it was important for me to be able to explain to my children as I got older what it was that I was experiencing in terms that they could understand. Because they did have to grow up watching mommy be sick all the time. And they did see me in the emergency room and be admitted to the hospital often. And instead of them being fearful of it, I wanted them to be understanding of it. And explain to them that I'm not like other mommies. This is what I can do. These things make it more difficult for me, but I still, want to do everything else that I can for you. And I compensated by, doing things, in the house. Like we did a lot of family stuff at home. We would have like bed picnics, like in our king size bed, and my children are 21, 18, and 17. And guess what? We still do that.
That's very cool.
Yeah. My husband and myself and my 3 kids all in our king size bed. We'll throw in a movie, we'll order in, and we'll sit there and we'll just do that. We'll play a lot of board games, play card games. We did a lot of arts and crafts. And I would take them to a lot of indoor events because it's temperature controlled and I'm not out in the sun, things like that. We spent a lot of time at the library. You have to find ways to incorporate, you have to work within your limitations and be okay with that and understand that, don't beat yourself up because you have migraine and you're a parent. And it's hard. Any mom, regardless of whether has a chronic illness or not, suffers from mom guilt.
Absolutely.
It's a really difficult thing to not feel.
Yeah.
But you're doing the best that you can, and you always have the best interests of your kids at heart. And all your children want to know is that they're loved and that they're validated and that they're heard and that they're appreciated and that they're cared for and that they're safe. And you're providing that for your children, and that's what's important. Not really what you can do for them, but what you're giving to them emotionally and providing for them in that regard. And I know you're doing that for your children, and that's what we have to keep in mind. We have to keep that perspective. And that'll help us get over that mom guilt a little easier because we're good. I still experience that, and my kids are older. I still feel bad when I have a bad day and they have to pick up the slack. But they reassure me, it's okay, we don't mind. We know that you have your bad days, but you still want to be that super mom, but your kids but you do everything already for us. We don't want anything else. And when you hear your kids tell you that,
it's amazing.
It's an amazing feeling, and that's because you give them their basic needs every single day.
Absolutely. It's huge. My oldest son actually wanted to come out for dinner a couple of weeks ago, and on the day off, this is a very common thing for me. Obviously, I'm sure this is some of you. I had to text him and say, I'm sorry, I'm just not well enough, and I'm just really, really sorry. So here we go with the apologies again. And he just texted me back, and I said, actually, you can come, but I can't cook. And I'm sure he knew what it meant. I would probably be in bed, I'll be on the couch and totally drugged up. And he said, no, Mom, it's more important you just take care of yourself. And I understand, and we can reschedule. So it's amazing when your children do that. And actually, one of the things that helps them do that, I think, is just communication.
Right.
So we're going to move on from parenting in just a minute, but I did want to quickly mention that it's kind of a really hard balance to get between explaining to your children what's going on and not terrifying them. But honestly, seeing your mother or your father, if there are men watching this, sick, is a scary thing.
Yes.
And if they don't understand what is going on in some way, then that becomes even more scary. Or if we don't tell them, hey, I can't be with you because I'm really, really sick, but I really love you, and when I feel better, I will, then it is a tendency for children to feel like they're not loved or not wanted, because all they know is that mommy or daddy has said, you know, I can't be with you. So in a sense, it's really important to explain something to your children,
Right.
to explain it in some way. I can't tell you that I got the balance right, but I can tell you that my children learned to cook at a very young age for me and for each other. I was a single mom for many years, so it kind of became essential. And they learned to do their own laundry. And you know, I'm sure that's going to hold them in great stead. There are a lot of good things that come out of children listening to their parent, open communication, and learning to do things that a lot of children would not normally learn to do.
Right.
They also often become very empathetic,
Yes.
which is kind of cool. So I want to quickly ask you another question here that we got asked. How do you hold on to hope when you've lived with migraine your entire life, feel like you have tried everything, seen dozens of doctors? What else is there even to discuss with your doctor? How do you hold on to hope, and what do you do?
You hold on to hope by appreciating and looking at what it is you're able to do despite your migraine. I've been there where I've had doctors give up on me and told me that there's nothing else they could do for me. And I sat in my car in the parking lot and cried, like, what am I going to do? And it's devastating. It's extremely devastating. But how I hold on to hope is I remember the little things. I have a loving and supporting husband that helps me hold on to hope. I have 3 very empathetic and loving children that helps me hold on to hope. I have a warm bed that helps me hold on to hope.
Right.
I can get up and make myself a cup of coffee, even if that's all I did that day. I hold on to hope. Those small things helps me hold on to hope, because I still have extremely tough, dark days, because this is not an easy journey. But I have to hold on to whatever I can to keep that hope alive. And it doesn't matter how small that light is at the end of the tunnel, as long as you still see it. That's important. And whatever it is in your life that helps you maintain your focus on that, whatever it may be for you, do that. Don't, you know, if all you could do is just get up out of your bed and just move over to your couch that day, say, well, I got up out my bed and I threw on some yoga pants and I got out my pajamas and I sat on the couch. That's amazing. That's hope. And those are the things that are going to get you through it. And dealing with doctors that, you know, just aren't doing what they can for you. We all go through that in our journeys, and it's a tough, you know, part of it. It really is. And if you have to sit in that for a little bit, sit in that for a little bit. Allow yourself to feel that. A lot of times we feel like we can't give ourselves permission to feel the upset and the disappointment of it. And it's important to let yourself feel that and grieve it. We go through the grieving process so much living with migraine, and allow yourself to go through that process. And then when you're ready to pick yourself up and go through it again, then you're ready to do it when you're ready to do it.
Right. It's interesting when we talk about hope. Honestly, I feel like crying, so I'm just going to be really honest about that. Because when we lose hope, we go into a big black hole that is very hard to get out of. We are already often very isolated, And without hope, we just bury ourselves in that isolation. So I'm sure it's something that we all deal with, and the more severe the disease presents itself in you, or the more frequent it presents, it's possible the more you have a tendency to lose hope. I know that for those of us who've had migraine for many, many years and have seen many doctors and have tried many medications, if not all the medications, and by the way, for those people who have had migraine for many years, it is actually possible to have tried all the medications. Sometimes I read things that there's no way you've tried everything, but if you had migraine for 20, 30, 40 years and been aggressive in treatment, it really is possible for you to have gone through everything, and a whole load of things that are probably not appropriate for migraine too. It's very hard to hold on to hope. So a couple of the ways that I do it is, first of all, I educate myself about what's in the clinical pipeline. It's helpful that I'm an advocate and I attend some conferences, but just knowing what is coming gives me hope. Even, again, if I think that it may not work for me, I'm hoping it will work for my children, or it will work for my grandchildren when I have grandchildren. That helps me hold on to hope. Knowing that I have friends who I can call when I am in that dark pit and say, I had a terrible experience with a doctor, or I have had a migraine that will not let up for days and days and days. Or I'm getting these horrible side effects, and all I want to do is just basically just give up on everything and on life. I call those friends and they just say, I get it. You know, I had the safety to cry on the phone with them, to tell them that I'm desperate. And they will tell me, don't give up. They will tell me, if this doctor's not working for you, then go find a doctor who will listen to you and who will partner with you. They remind me of my basic human rights, which we're going to go over at the end of this Facebook Live event. Just that I hope it will encourage you and give you hope as well. And also, I think we lose so much control in our lives, which helps remove hope from our lives. So by reclaiming some control, even if it's just a little bit, that also gives you hope. So I know that I have the ability to do advocacy in some form or other. Not a lot, and there's a huge cost on my body, but I have the ability to do that. I feel like in some small way, maybe I'm making a difference. And if I can just encourage people, even by saying, you're not alone. There are so many of us out there. I see comments all the time. I have the most complex form of migraine. I have so many comorbid conditions, which is something I don't think we talk enough about. And there's nobody else like that out there. The reality is there is. I want to encourage you, sadly, you're just not alone in that. There are a lot of us who have very complex forms of this disease and lots of comorbid conditions, and it's easy to get discouraged, but you are not alone. I also love to write. It helps me get my feelings out. The article I just wrote for migraine.com was really just kind of like a really passionate article about how I feel about my experience with the healthcare professionals that I've seen, or some of them. And that actually kind of helps me to say, this is how I feel, this is my experience. Or I started doing art. I used to just be able to do stick figures, but somehow I'm able to put something down on paper. And so that's really encouraging. Music is a huge thing for me. Just finding things that make you feel good, and accepting that there's going to be a lot of days when you feel crappy.
Exactly.
Right? I think is a huge thing. So I know that you have talked a bit about depression and anxiety. So we're going to move kind of onto that. I think we're doing okay on time. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, or how it impacts your life?
Absolutely. So depression is, I call migraine and depression the two beasts in my life. And it's this vicious cycle. You know, they're these two beasts that are chasing each other's tails. Right. And it's very difficult to manage them both. And if I'm being completely honest, I'm in one of the worst depression flares that I've been in a few years. And I say depression flare. It's very important for me what language I use when I talk about depression or anxiety. I don't personify it. I try not to say I am depressed, because then that makes me the depression, and I am not. So that's why I say depression flare. But it can be extremely hard when you live a life with daily chronic pain and have it not affect your, your mental health. And I've gone through some extremely dark moments. Those of you that follow me know I speak very candidly that I've attempted suicide twice. And those were very, very, very difficult times because I have lost that hope. And I know what that feels like. And it's a very dark and desolate place. And I do not want anybody who is anywhere close to feeling that way to feel that that is the answer, or to feel like they're the only ones that are feeling that. There is the other side. There is another side. You can get to the other side of that. And even though it's extremely painful to be there, you are so worth still being here. And I've done the work to recognize that and understand that. And what that took for me is to understand that despite the migraine and despite the depression and despite the anxiety, I am still Jaime. I am not those things. And for so many of us, we live our lives thinking that we are that. And we inhabit our symptoms and feel like, we represent that, and that is not what it is. And we lose ourselves in that. And that's what I did. I lost myself in my chronic illnesses, and I have several. And it's very easy to forget who you are. It's almost as if when you look in the mirror, you just see a blur. You don't see your face anymore. And I had to learn to build myself back up and remember what it is that makes me who I am. And it's as simple as remembering what it is that you love to do. If you love to read, if you have hobbies, if you love art, if you love to go to museums, if you love to exercise, if you're able to, if you love to travel, if you're able to, whatever it is that makes you you, embrace that and remember that that's still there. That's still a part of you. And I had to learn that on this journey. And, depression still crops up. But what I do, what's very important for me is to recognize that it's there. I try not to dismiss it and push it down, because when I do that, that in turn makes my physical pain worse and prolongs that. And I speak it, I acknowledge it. Okay, I'm feeling this today. So I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm gonna use my tools, whether it's a day where I need to do some reflection, if it's a few minutes of meditation, or if it's a day where I just need to be distracted. If that's watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy all day, and that's a good 12 to 13 hours of distraction, I'm going to do that. And communication of what I'm feeling is the biggest part of that. So what I do with my family, and this took me a long time to be able to do this. This is, it took time and practice and going through a lot of therapy to learn to do this. But I tell my husband and I tell my children, this is how I'm feeling today, and I'm just not able to, do anything else but stay in the bed today or just sit on the couch today. It's just not a good day. And they're like, okay, that's fine. And my husband's like, no problem, I'll take care of dinner. Kids, okay, they'll take care of the dogs. They'll clean up, they'll do errands, they'll do chores. I won't have to ask them to, they automatically do it. And they give me the permission to not be okay. And that's important, regardless if that's with mental illness or with chronic pain. Having the permission to not be okay is a huge thing. Because when other people give you that permission, then you start to give yourself that permission.
Absolutely. So I think it's very important to let people know, in case you don't know, that depression and anxiety are comorbid with migraine frequently. They can be two completely separate entities. But also, I just want to tell you that if you have chronic pain for many days in a month, or even every day in a month, it is going to be an extremely rare person who does not struggle with depression and anxiety. So I would say for myself, it's kind of my dirty little secret. I do not want to talk to my doctors about it, because my experience, especially in emergency rooms, is, oh, you're anxious, let me give you something for that, or you're depressed, let me give you something for that. And I want to tell them, if I'm not in pain, I'm very happy. You know, I'm not a super anxious person. I'm not depressed. I think for me, it presents a little different than for you. Probably for all of us, it presents in slightly different ways. But I know that when I have a really severe migraine that I cannot break in any way, shape, or form, and I'm taking a lot of medication, by day 3, that seems to be the magic number for me, I am in a big black hole, and I am losing hope. I do not want to talk to anyone. I start getting messages from friends who know me. Where are you? We don't see you online. What's going on? We're worried about you, which is really amazing. I often don't answer them at that time because I'm just too depressed, but just hearing from them encourages me. And I have to it's a lot of self-talk. This is going to pass. It's going to pass, it's going to pass, it's going to pass. I just had to keep telling myself that. I do things that I would not normally do. So I binge watch Hallmark movies, to be quite honest. I hope you don't judge me for that.
Oh, of course.
And I love British period movies. So anything you don't have to think about that doesn't have loud noises, bright flashing lights, people shooting each other, anything that's emotionally depressing. I do that. I will confess, sometimes I binge on food that I should not binge on, but if I'm really sick, then I'm barely eating anything, so that's really hard as well. And just giving myself the permission to be in bed and to just be kind to myself, do things that I would not normally do. I play games on my phone, anything that distracts me from the pain. So that's how I deal with that element of depression. And I purposely do not think about the future, because honestly, the future is, it can be very depressing, very discouraging. I can't think about next month. I can't think about next year. I don't want to think about the next 30 or 40 years of my life and living like this for another 30, 40 years. So I just try to make every day count. If it's a bad day, I'm in bed. If it's a good day, I will try to do something. Anxiety is a huge issue for me. So especially when it comes to seeing doctors or trying new medications. So I call it medication PTSD, and I know that's not a scientific term, but because I have had so many bad experiences on medications, I'm sure a lot of you have, and some bad experiences with doctors, as well as some great ones, but the bad ones cause me a lot of anxiety. So whenever I go see a doctor, especially a new doctor, I panic. I feel like my heart is pounding, and I know my blood pressure goes sky high because they always take your blood pressure. I don't want to go see them. All I want to say is, please listen to me. Please listen to me. Please take it seriously. I have a life, and I'm in so much pain. I don't know what to do about it. And all I think is they're not going to have time, or they're not going to understand. So my anxiety goes sky high. I tend to write questions in the notes section of my iPhone, so that, because it's hard to remember things when you're panicking, so that way I can read off on the questions. Sometimes I actually record a session in case I can't remember what is going on, and I always get my medical notes afterwards, so I know what was written. I've learned to speak up to the doctor, especially if they're dictating while you're in the room, and say, well, actually, that isn't exactly what I said. And that also helps relieve my anxiety, and just knowing that I'm allowed to have a voice. When it comes to new medications, that is a huge deal as well. When you've had bad side effects to medications, I've had some really, really bad ones. One of my sons had bad side effects to a couple of medications as well. And that makes you panic or super anxious about trying new ones. There's a tendency to catastrophize, which I definitely do. There is a certain element of that is very valid and very real. We should be cautious. If you have negative reactions to a lot of medications, you should be cautious, about what you take. You do need to be in communication with your doctor, and you do need to be monitored. So those are the ways that I kind of manifest depression and anxiety, recognizing it in myself, and also I started talking to a therapist just about pain. So just being able to say, I have this pain and I'm panicking about it. You just basically sit and talk for an hour, and that is amazingly cathartic. I see that someone asked a question, and by the way, it looks like we're going to get through all your questions. So if you have questions, we do have somebody letting us know what they are. So please feel free to ask us anything you would like. How do you handle fear of losing your job when your boss doesn't understand? And that can definitely play into depression and anxiety. For myself, it was one of the main reasons I took way too much medication, because I just felt like I had to push through. I was always scared of losing my job. I eventually did lose my job, and immediately just realized I was not able to go back to work. I mean, honestly, I was not able to work at that time. But for many, many years, that was my only fear. Or can I speak up to my boss? Can I tell them that I can't handle scent, that it triggers a migraine? And concerns about what they would do. Would they find a reason to let me go? Would they find a reason not to promote me? Which in fact they did. And that is very, very discouraging. So at those times, knowing that you actually have rights for accommodations, and there are places that you can go to look at that. Hopefully one of the moderators here will put some information up about that. But there are certain workplace accommodations that you are entitled to if you need them, because migraine is a disability. So there are reasonable accommodations that you can ask, put in writing, go to human resources. It's often harder if it's a small company, but if you're in a larger company, then go to human resources and deal with it. And whatever you do, always put it in writing. Make sure that your doctor puts it in writing what you need as well. So whether it's the ability to wear sunglasses or have a scent-free environment, which is often huge, or for some people, certain types of fluorescent lighting can trigger them, or the ability to go and lie down if you get a migraine attack and allow for the medication to take effect. All these things are standard accommodations that you can request. Often I think our fear of people's responses makes us not speak up, right? And we need to speak up, because if you had epilepsy and you were having seizures, you wouldn't even think twice about saying, okay, when I get a seizure, I need to go lie down, right? But because it's migraine and it's not really understood, we're afraid to say what we need. And it's time for us to realize that this really is a serious disease, and that we want to work, right?
Exactly.
We want to work, we want to live a life. And so it's okay to speak up and say what you need.
Right, we want to be productive. And, you know, some workplaces may allow telework for you to work from home, or maybe if you have morning migraine and later shifts work better for you, means you can come in later and work a later shift, if they're willing to accommodate that for you. There are ways to accommodate your schedule and work around your triggers. But again, because migraine is so stigmatized and it is seen, especially in the workplace, as, you know, being unreliable and not productive, it's really difficult for people to disclose that to their superiors, to their employers. So we both completely understand that dilemma. But like Shoshana said, you do have rights, and you do have basic accommodations that you can have put in place. But if your employer offers ways for you to work from home, or have, you can work a few hours a day, and have a different type of schedule that you can still get your work done and still be productive. Try to look at those different alternatives as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. I see another couple of questions here. One is an extremely hot topic that we're going to get to after this question, and one that I've never talked about before. But first, I just want to say, someone asked, how do you talk to doctors when so many have dismissed you? So that's a little bit about what I was saying about the anxiety I get before seeing doctors. That is made more complex if you have multiple comorbid conditions. Migraine seems to attract a lot of comorbid conditions, and it seems, I'm not sure, obviously I'm not a doctor, not a scientist in any way, shape, or form, but from the people I see, it seems that the longer you have migraine and chronic pain, the more comorbid conditions often seem to kind of tag along for the ride. I call them just one big happy family. They're always saying, come along, come and join us. You know, there's plenty of room in here for more. And I know for sure that's true with me. It can get really discouraging. So I think just knowing that you have the right to effective, timely, and knowledgeable medical treatment, which is one of the rights we're going to go over at the end, is a huge thing. Sometimes we need friends to remind us that. You would think that I would know it by now, but I have a friend I call on the East Coast all the time when things go wrong. Hopefully not only when things go wrong. And I say, you know, this happened with this doctor, and she will tell me, then stop seeing him. Find someone else who gets it, someone else who will listen to you. And that's really, really important. I mean, sometimes we hear about people say that their doctors fired them. I have had that too. That is actually abandonment, and there is something that you can do about that. But you, as a patient or as a person with migraine or a cluster headache or another headache disorder, you actually have the right to fire your doctor if you are not getting timely and adequate and knowledgeable medical treatment. You also have the right to go to your insurance company and to fight to see a doctor who is out of network if a doctor who is certified in your condition is not in network. It can be a long fight. I want to encourage you that I recently won that fight to see a certified headache specialist because there were none in my network. Sometimes all we hear is negative stuff, right? And so I think it's very important. Someone reminded me of that at this conference we're at, that you need to give the victories as well. So it is possible to win appeals. It is exhausting, but it is possible. When you go see a new doctor, it's really hard to be hopeful when you've had bad experiences, but there are some amazing doctors out there. Absolutely amazing. Yes. A lot of them work with migraine patient advocates. A lot of them give a lot of their time. A lot of them do Facebook Live events like this. There are some amazing doctors out there, but it can take a lot of time and energy and courage to go out and to find that doctor.
Yeah,
right?
You hit all the nails on the head, so I don't have anything else to add.
There you go. Okay, so hopefully I'm not talking too much.
No, you're doing great.
All right, so this is a really hot topic. I've never talked about this online before. I've never written about it. But somebody just asked, has anyone had any luck with CBD oil? So I don't know if you want to take off on that one.
Yeah, I've never talked about this either. Well, I guess it depends on where you live and what kind of CBD oil you are getting. And there are so many different varieties. So this is like really difficult and complex. It's a very complex question. Where I live, you can only get hemp-based CBD. So that's my only experience with CBD oil. I do have a tincture that I take daily, twice daily for migraine. And it doesn't necessarily, for me personally, help with the head pain, but it does help with my occipital, neck, and shoulder pain. It helps ease that. And I do use CBD salve, and that helps a lot with muscle ache, soreness, and that helps ease that a lot. And it's very soothing. But it's not like a miracle thing for me. It's just another tool in my migraine toolkit that I prefer to use before going to any of my abortives. If I can try to manage my discomfort, because I have discomfort and pain and ache all day, every day, and I don't want to use my medication too much. I don't want to overuse it. So I try to use things that will help manage and ease my discomfort in a way that won't cause any medication overuse, and situations like that. So I find that it does help in relieving some muscle tension in my neck and shoulders and my occipital areas, greater and lesser occipitals. but that's been my only experience. I do use a CBD vape pen, and that helps a lot with anxiety for me and relaxation and helping me go to sleep. And that's very helpful as well for those things. But I haven't really found a really, big benefit for migraine pain itself. But it has other great benefits that I find helpful in other areas in my chronic pain journey.
So when we're talking about CBD, it's incredibly complex, like Jaime said, and it's really the Wild West out there because it's so unregulated at this point in time. I'm encouraged that there is an increasing amount of research on it and that there's an increasing number of medical doctors who are actually talking about it and looking into it. So from my own personal experience, I just want to let you know that when you talk about CBD, people sometimes mean the CBD with THC, sometimes they mean the cannabidiols, I have problems saying that word, that are included in it, the terpenes, the CBD, the CBDA, the CBNs, THC, there's THCA, and there's a whole slew of other ones. I am by no means an expert on it. I actually talk a lot with the leader of a migraine group that is specifically for this to try to get help on it and to try to understand it. Also, then there's the method of administration. You can smoke it, you can vape it, you can use it in a cream, you can put it in capsules and swallow it, you can use it as a tincture under your tongue. So for myself personally, I have become pretty desperate trying to treat migraine. I cannot take any triptans because I had very serious side effect from them. I cannot take DHE, which is norgotamine, because I was hospitalized with it. So that means I don't have any abortive medications I can use. I only have rescue medications. They're extremely strong and they can have potentially very serious side effects. So I panic a lot about actually treating the migraine, which have become increasingly hard to stop. So I did start trying CBD oil recently. I do not smoke it. I do not vape it. I buy it in two different forms. I'm in California, so it's legal. I actually have a card. I actually get a form that's a hemp-based form that is a full spectrum. So my understanding is that full spectrum is generally much better. That just means it has all the terpenes and a whole lot of other things in it. Please don't ask me any more details now because I really don't understand it, but I know that that is better. It also tastes so much worse and it smells horrible. So I tend to put it in a capsule and then swallow it. If I'm really courageous, I'll put it under my tongue for a few seconds and then swallow it. But honestly, it's just really disgusting.
Yeah, it's like taking dirt.
Oh yes, it's absolutely, it's just, yeah, people describe it as earthy, but let's just call it mud. It's just gross. And then I also get a form of CBD oil that is from the marijuana plant that is predominantly CBD. It's a 30-to-1, so it has almost no THC in it. Definitely not enough for psychoactive effects. I do not like having any kind of psychoactive effect. I do not respond well to that. So I tend to put that in a capsule as well because I'm a baby. It is full spectrum. It tastes absolutely gross. I am very encouraged and very discouraged. So in terms of stopping a migraine, I have never had any luck with that. And I've tried very high doses. It can be detrimental in very high doses. For those who don't know, CBD can actually change something called the CPY enzymes in your liver, which is how medications are metabolized. So if you take a high dose of CBD, I can't tell you what that is because it's probably individual, at the same time as taking other medications, it changes the way your body metabolizes them. So for me, they became much, much stronger to the point that it was pretty scary. And so I have never done that since. And it didn't help the migraine anyway. But what I have noticed, and it could be coincidence, there's no way of knowing, I've started taking a little bit every single day. Actually, it's not a little, it's a pretty high dose because I'm kind of resistant to it. And the frequency of my migraine attacks has reduced in the past month. Again, that could be coincidence. I could be going through just a good patch. It would be unlikely in the middle of summer with the heat and humidity that I would be going through a good patch. But at the moment, I'm kind of helpful, so I find a way to pay for that every month, and I'm going to keep on trying to take it. When I do get the migraine attacks, they are much harder to treat. That could also just be coincidence. But I'll take a few good days anytime. So for me, I would say that the brand that I use and the dosage that I take and the form that I take it is probably helping prevent some migraine attacks. And that's about as definitive as I can get, but definitive enough that I'm willing to pay the money to keep on getting it and keep taking it. But it's very scary because laws vary by state.
Right.
So I didn't bring anything here with me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid to, I'm kind of a scaredy cat. I'm afraid to travel with it. And yeah, that's my CBD story. I know some people have amazing results,
Right.
and some people don't, and some people like me are kind of in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
But at least, try, if that's something you really want to try, start with a good quality full spectrum hemp version,
Right.
probably not one of the MLM ones. There are some great brands who look in the migraine group. I'm not sure if we're allowed to say what that group is. Are we allowed to say it? Okay, well, I'm going to say it. Hopefully, I'm not going to get in trouble for this. So it's Migraine Buds. They're fabulous. They have far more knowledge than I have, and probably you have, and any of the rest of us have, right? So yeah, go look at Migraine Buds, and they will. They'll help you figure out if this is something you want to do. So.
So before we close out, we can go over what your basic rights are as a patient. And these are things to always keep in mind. And these are the things that are going to help you hold on to hope, help you, hold on to self-kindness, and to keep, having some type of positivity and empowerment despite living with migraine. So I think we can each read one off.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. You have a right to live a life of dignity, despite whatever limitations may be caused by our disease.
You have a right to not be blamed or dismissed for having a headache disease, and all you want is effective treatment.
You have a right to gain timely access to quality medical treatment with physicians who understand and appreciate the complexity of migraine and other headache disorders, as well as the comorbid conditions which can adversely affect both severity and treatment.
You have the right to gain timely access to necessary social service provisions such as disability without prejudice and without bias.
You have the right to advance robust scientific research that addresses the impact of headache disease and chronic pain on people living with these diseases, their caregivers, and families and society.
You have the right to have your self-report of pain taken seriously without prejudice, bias, or dismissal.
You have the right to have a free and open dialogue with your physician about your pain and its impact on your life.
You have the right to receive treatment that is consistent with current pain, migraine, and other headache disorder management standards.
You have the right to discuss with your physician their diagnosis and prescribe treatments without fear of being labeled hostile, difficult, or non-compliant.
And finally, you have the right to seek relief by whatever means is most effective for you, whether it is traditional, alternative, or complementary treatments. So we're going to say goodbye.
Yeah.
I love doing this with you, Jaime. I hope that everybody out there got something out of this. And I know that we're going to do another Ask the Advocates on migraine.com. We'll probably have some new advocates next time. And we just want to let you all know that you are awesome, that you have value, that you have purpose, and that there is still hope.
Yes. Always remember, you are not your migraine. You are not your mental illness. You are uniquely made, and you are who you are supposed to be in this time and moment. So please keep those things close to the chest. You are validated, you are loved, you are appreciated, and you are worthy.
Absolutely. So goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
And, we hope you have a healthy day.